A fast-moving object the size of Manhattan is hurtling towards our solar system, and it will make its closest pass to Earth on December 17th.
2025, astronomers confirmed Comet 3I/ATLAS, the third interstellar object ever discovered.
We've got some fresh images of 3I Atlas, a third ever interstellar object observed from Earth.
NASA calls it a comet, a faint streak of light, slicing across the darkness at more than 200,000 kilometers per hour, faster than anything humanity has ever built, faster than anything that should belong here. They named it 3I Atlas, the third known interstellar object ever spotted. Officially, it's nothing more than a visitor, a chunk of frozen dust and gas from another star system, drifting through our solar neighborhood before vanishing forever. But then, the questions start. Why does it reflect sunlight like polished metal, not dusty ice? Why is its tail so symmetrical, almost engineered? And why, according to early telescope readings, does it seem to change brightness in precise intervals, like a signal blinking from deep space? Online forums explode. But so was the idea of landing humans on the moon until we did it. Because here's the strange thing, if you strip away the wild speculation and look purely at physics, some of it actually checks out. We already have the engines to reach solar escape velocity. We already have materials that can mimic icy reflectivity. We already have the technology to transmit laser signals so tight that no one else would notice. So, what if 3I Atlas wasn't born in another solar system but built here, under our own atmosphere? A machine wearing a cosmic mask. Tonight, we're not asking whether it's true. We're asking the question that really matters. Could humanity actually fake a comet and fool the entire world? Let's say you're part of a secret project, something buried deep underground, in a lab with no windows, funded by a line in a government budget that just says research. Your mission is to build a spacecraft that doesn't look like a spacecraft at all, but like a comet. Not just any comet, an interstellar one. The kind that moves so fast and so far that even NASA would mistake it for something born in another star system. To fake a comet, you need one thing above all: speed. The kind of speed that makes planets blur into the background. Escaping Earth's gravity takes about 11 kilometers per second. But to escape the entire solar system and reach interstellar space, you'd need at least 3 times that. That's your delta V, your fuel budget. And it's enormous. Chemical rockets like the ones that took Apollo to the moon can roar and burn with thunderous power. But they're hopelessly inefficient. They guzzle propellant like a jet engine trying to reach the stars. By the time you'd get to the required speed, you'd have already run out of fuel and hope. So brute force is out. You need something smarter, quieter. That's where ion propulsion comes in. Instead of explosions, you get a soft, constant whisper of acceleration. Tiny electric engines fire streams of charged atoms, each one pushing your craft just a little. Not much, but they never stop. Run them for years, and you'll eventually outrun every chemical rocket ever made. NASA's Dawn mission used that very idea, slowly gliding between asteroids for almost a decade. Proof that patience in space can beat raw power. Still, if you really wanted to fake an interstellar comet, you'd need more. Enter nuclear thermal propulsion, a compact reactor heating hydrogen to extreme temperatures and blasting it out the back like the breath of a tiny star. It's dangerous, expensive, and politically explosive, but it's efficient. A few reactors like that could send a machine out of the solar system fast enough to play hide and seek with the stars. Or maybe you skip engines entirely and go old-school cosmic solar sail. Picture a massive, mirror-like sheet stretching hundreds of meters wide, catching sunlight the way a ship catches the wind. Each photon that hits it gives a gentle shove. One shove doesn't matter, but over time, those shoves add up, building speed until you're surfing light itself. It's elegant, silent, and very comet-like. So now you have speed, but a fake comet isn't just about motion, it's about appearance. Real comets are dirty snowballs, covered in ice and dust that shimmer as they melt in sunlight. So you disguise your craft under layers of frozen carbon dioxide, aerogel, and dust. From a telescope's view, it would scatter light just like a natural comet, glowing with a hazy aura. As it warmed, the outer shell would sublimate, releasing a beautiful tail of gas and debris, completely normal, completely fake. Even its shape could sell the illusion. Comets often look irregular or teardrop-shaped, sculpted by heat and outgassing. A clever design could mimic that perfectly, maybe using heat vents or controlled exhausts to make it look like natural jets of vapor. From millions of kilometers away, no one would know the difference. From Earth, it would appear as a glowing blur of ice and motion, mysterious, distant, and untraceable. But up close, if you ever got near enough to touch it, you'd find cold metal hidden beneath the frost antennas, sensors, thrusters all humming quietly under a disguise of dust. Could humanity really pull that off decades ago? Absolutely not. But today, with reusable rockets, compact reactors, autonomous probes, and materials that can mimic the properties of ice, the line between impossible and classified has never been thinner. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be cheap. But the laws of physics wouldn't stop you. And sometimes, in the world of conspiracy theories, that's all it takes, a whisper of possibility wrapped in the shimmer of a comet's tail. All right? Let's imagine you've done it. You've built your fake comet, a spacecraft wrapped in ice, sailing through the solar system, glowing beautifully in the sunlight. To the untrained eye, it's perfect. Astronomers log it, name it, file it under harmless interstellar visitor, and move on. Mission accomplished. Right, not so fast. See, space scientists are professional skeptics. They don't just look at light, they listen to it. They measure, compare, analyze, and argue. If your comet is fake, you're not just hiding from cameras, you're hiding from physics itself. Let's start with heat. Every real comet has a thermal fingerprint. When sunlight hits its surface, the ice sublimates, turning directly from solid to gas, and that process releases energy in a chaotic, uneven way. To infrared telescopes, this looks like a messy patchwork of hot and cold spots. But your machine wouldn't behave like that. It would radiate heat more evenly, more smoothly like metal does. And telescopes like NASA's Spitzer or ESA's Herschel are precise enough to notice. You'd need a way to mask that signature. Maybe a layer of insulating material to keep the metal cool. Maybe active cooling systems to bleed off excess heat into vents disguised as outgassing jets. That's not impossible. Military satellites do this all the time to hide from infrared sensors. But doing it in deep space, automatically, without any human intervention, that's where things get tricky. One bad algorithm, one cooling system failure, and suddenly your comet starts glowing too evenly, too perfect, and the illusion cracks. Then comes motion. Comets don't fly straight. They tumble, twist, and wobble under the influence of sunlight, gravity, and outgassing pressure. Their trajectories are messy, not something a guidance computer would ever choose. If your fake comet moves too smoothly, it stands out. Astronomers would notice the precision and ask, why is this thing so stable? So you'd need to fake chaos, tiny thrusters firing randomly, small jets pushing the craft off course just enough to look natural. You'd have to write software that makes your spacecraft look stupid. And that's not even the hardest part. Let's talk about light. When a real comet rotates, sunlight reflects differently depending on the angle of the ice and dust. That creates irregular patterns, flickers of brightness that appear random. But if your surface includes flat metal panels under the disguise, those reflections could become rhythmic, too consistent. Astronomers use those light curves to determine shape and rotation. So if your comet flashes like a mirror ball, the truth won't stay hidden for long. That's where things get interesting because according to early telescope reports on 3I Atlas, some amateur astronomers claim to see subtle, repeating patterns in its brightness. 15-minute intervals, tiny, precise oscillations. They called it signal modulation. Of course, the data turned out to be fake, a viral hoax born from a Reddit post and a few photoshopped charts. But it revealed something deeper. People wanted to believe it. It was too cinematic, too perfect, a comet that blinked like it was talking to someone. Now imagine, just for a moment, that one day someone really did find such a pattern, a small, rhythmic pulse in reflected light, not random, but intentional. What happens next? First comes the silence. NASA, ESA, the Chinese National Space Agency. They'd all quietly lock down their data. No press releases, no tweets, Internal emails start flying verify before public statement. Then comes the leak. Because in the modern world, secrets never stay buried. An astronomer on Twitter posts something cryptic. Strange optical modulation detected in Atlas data. Screenshots spread. Conspiracy channels explode. And suddenly, half the planet thinks the sky is spying on them. The public reaction would be chaos wrapped in fascination. Some would scream aliens. Others would whisper espionage. Talk shows would speculate whether 3i Atlas was built by the US, China, or, depending on the accent, the other guys. Within hours, every government would be running simulations, comparing orbits, looking for launch records, trying to figure out who could have done it. Meanwhile, the telescopes keep watching. And that's when someone notices something even stranger. The comet's path isn't constant. It's adjusting. Not by much, just a few millimeters per second, but enough to suggest propulsion. A comet pushed slightly off its natural trajectory by invisible hands. Now, if that ever happened, all bets are off. It would trigger the fastest joint investigation in human history. Scientists would call emergency conferences. Defense departments would quietly prepare for, well, whatever. Because if someone on Earth has the technology to send an object into interstellar space and make it look natural, that's not just a scientific anomaly, that's a geopolitical earthquake. And even if the truth came out, even if it turned out to be some mundane data glitch, the damage would be done. Because from that moment on, every new comet, every glowing streak in the night sky, would carry a shadow of suspicion. People would look up and wonder, is that a gift from the cosmos? Or a message from someone pretending to be the cosmos? And that's how one fake comet, real or imagined, could permanently rewrite how we see the universe. Not as an open book of stars, but as a chessboard. Let's say it finally happens. One morning, a routine data stream from a European observatory crosses a weird threshold. Something in 3i Atlas's light curve doesn't make sense. The comet. This faint blur, first spotted by NASA's Atlas survey back in 2024, suddenly shows an acceleration that shouldn't exist. Comets can be unpredictable. Sure, their tails erupt, their cores fracture, solar radiation pushes them off course, all normal. But this was too clean. A steady, precise change in velocity. No fragments, no gas jets, just motion, controlled motion. Within hours, the data spreads quietly through encrypted channels between agencies NASA, ESA, JAXA, CNSA. A few astronomers are told to double-check their readings. A few are told to stop talking, and suddenly, 3i Atlas, the harmless snowball from another star, becomes a classified object. At first, no one outside the scientific world notices. The press still runs the usual stories. Interstellar comet leaves solar system. New insights. Into cosmic visitors, but behind the scenes, something shifts. Observatories that once streamed their data publicly start to delay uploads. Amateur astronomers complain about missing telemetry. Then, one day, a Reddit user posts, "Why is Atlas moving like it has an engine?" That's when the storm begins. Conspiracy channels explode overnight. Some say it's an alien probe, the next Oumuamua moment. Others insist it's human-made. A secret satellite launched decades ago, now leaving Earth's gravity under a false identity. Someone digs up old military budgets and claims to find hidden funding for interstellar surveillance platforms. The phrase catches fire online. Project Atlas. Governments issue statements short, bland, and unconvincing. NASA says the data is still under review. The Pentagon denies involvement. China calls it Western fear-mongering. Russia blames AI misinterpretation. The European Space Agency says nothing at all. Then the first leak drops an internal email chain between two engineers at an American observatory. Infrared signature, inconsistent with volatile outgassing. Metallic resonance likely. The email is real. The fallout is immediate. Within 24 hours, the world splits in two. On one side, panic. News networks broadcast emergency panels. Analysts talk about rogue intelligence systems and non-terrestrial surveillance. Politicians demand investigations. The word weapon begins to appear in headlines. If someone on Earth can launch a satellite, cloak it in ice, and send it to interstellar space, What else could they do? On the other side, denial. Skeptics argue it's just solar radiation pressure, the same effect that once fooled scientists with Oumuamua. They remind everyone how fragile data can be, how easy it is to misread light curves. It's not a spy, they say. It's a rock. But while the world argues, 3 Atlas keeps moving smooth, silent, and eerily precise. At a certain point, it becomes impossible to ignore. Its trajectory bends ever so slightly as if correcting itself. Not random, not chaotic, but deliberate, like something steering. Now it's no longer about science, it's about politics and paranoia. The United Nations holds an emergency closed-door meeting. Behind those glass walls, military advisors from every major power sit across from each other. Not to discuss aliens, but each other. Because if this really is man-made, whoever built it just demonstrated interstellar capability and the ability to hide it. Imagine the implications. If one country could disguise a spacecraft as a comet, then every glowing object in the sky could, in theory, be a weapon, a surveillance probe, or a lie. The entire foundation of global transparency space treaties, shared observation networks. Trust in open data would collapse overnight. Meanwhile, people all over the planet step outside at night and look up. They see a tiny streak of light, fading toward the stars, and they wonder, is that just frozen dust? Or the first machine to ever leave home pretending it didn't? A few weeks later, 3I Atlas slips beyond detection range. Its faint blue tail vanishes into the dark between the planets. NASA declares it lost. The internet calls it gone dark. Some claim it deactivated itself after completing a mission. Others say it was retrieved. No one knows. But one thing has changed forever. From that day forward, the night sky isn't just a place of wonder, it's a field of suspicion. Every comet, every asteroid, every unidentified light becomes a potential mask. Space no longer feels pure or distant. It feels occupied. And in that quiet paranoia, one truth emerges: even if 3I Atlas was nothing but ice, the idea that it could have been something else will haunt humanity for generations. Because in a world where we can no longer tell the difference between a comet and a machine, the final mystery isn't out there. It's us. When the dust finally settles, long after 3I Atlas has vanished into the dark beyond Neptune, humanity is left staring into the silence it left behind. Whether it was real or fake, natural or engineered, no longer matters, because something more profound has already changed our trust in the sky. Before 3I Atlas, comets were simple things, frozen relics from the dawn of the solar system. Beautiful, harmless, ancient. But now, every streak of light across the night becomes a question mark. Every glimmer could be a signal, a disguise, or a reminder that we're not just observers of the universe anymore. We're participants and maybe deceivers. Let's rewind for a second. Say 3I Atlas was artificial, an experiment by some covert agency or global coalition. What could they possibly have learned from it? First, plausible deniability. If you can make a machine look like a comet, you can hide anything. Surveillance, reconnaissance, data collection, all masked as cosmic phenomena. Imagine thousands of natural objects quietly sending data back home, invisible to every radar. That's not just stealth. That's the perfect cover story written by nature itself. Second, technological dominance. If a single nation had cracked interstellar propulsion, even on a small scale, it would change everything: the balance of power, the definition of borders, the future of exploration. Space would stop being a shared frontier and start becoming territory again. And third, the psychological test. Maybe 3I Atlas was never meant to spy. Maybe it was meant to observe something else, us, to see how humanity reacts when faced with something unexplainable. Do we panic? Do we unite? Do we start lying to ourselves to keep the illusion of control? Because that's exactly what happened. When 3I Atlas appeared, scientists debated, governments deflected, and the internet invented its own truth. In a way, the comet became a mirror reflecting our paranoia, our imagination, and our desperation for meaning. We didn't need aliens or conspiracies to lose our balance. All it took was uncertainty. If you think about it, that's the real experiment, not a probe wrapped in ice, but a psychological stress test for an entire species. How much ambiguity can civilization tolerate before it fractures? How many maybes can we handle before we start rewriting reality? And if 3i Atlas wasn't fake, if it was truly natural? A piece of another solar system, then the irony is even sharper. Because we took something pure, something genuinely cosmic, and turned it into a symbol of fear. We looked at the universe, and instead of seeing wonder, we saw a threat. That says more about us than it ever could about any object drifting through the void. There's another possibility too, one that scientists whisper about when the cameras are off. What if the entire debate, real or fake, man-made or alien, didn't matter? What if the real lesson of 3i Atlas was that we are already capable of building such things? Not today, maybe, but soon. The ion drives, the small reactors, the autonomous AI navigation, they all exist, just scattered across research labs and prototype stages. Combine them, give it 20 years, and you could absolutely launch a craft capable of pretending to be a comet. We might not have done it yet, but we've shown that we will. So maybe 3i Atlas wasn't the lie, maybe it was the prophecy. A preview of what's coming when humans begin to seed the cosmos with artificial travelers designed to blend in. To explore without being noticed. To watch quietly from the shadows between worlds. When that day comes, we'll have to face a new kind of moral question. If we can hide in the stars, should we? If we can fake nature perfectly, do we risk destroying our ability to tell what's real at all? Because once you've learned how to disguise truth as beauty, there's no turning back. Maybe 3i Atlas was never a secret probe, or a weapon, or an alien visitor. Maybe it was just a rock. But its greatest impact wasn't gravitational, it was philosophical. It reminded us that the universe doesn't need to be hostile to terrify us. All it has to do is remain silent long enough for our imagination to fill in the blanks. And if there's one lesson we'll carry from this cosmic ghost, it's that humanity's greatest fear isn't what's out there, it's what we might already be capable of. Because sooner or later, the next 3i Atlas will appear. And this time, when we look up and ask, what is that, we might not like the answer. In the end, maybe 3i Atlas was nothing more than what NASA said it was, a lump of ancient ice from a dying star, passing briefly through our neighborhood before fading back into darkness. Maybe there were no hidden engines, no secret governments, no conspiracies buried under frozen camouflage. But the moment that question existed, what if it wasn't a comet? Something in us changed forever. Because the truth is, the story of 3i Atlas was never really about the object itself. It was about us, our reflex to distrust, our hunger to imagine, our inability to look into the unknown without trying to turn it into a reflection of our own fears. When the first telescopes tracked its path, the scientists saw numbers, the world saw mystery. And in that gap between data and belief, an entire mythology was born. We turned an ordinary visitor into a symbol of everything we secretly suspect about the universe, that someone, somewhere, might be watching back. Maybe that's why 3i Atlas haunts us. Because deep down, we know we're finally powerful enough to build something like it. And that means we're also powerful enough to lie to ourselves on a cosmic scale. Think about it: a species that once looked up at the stars and dreamed of exploration, now wonders whether those same stars are watching us through metal masks. We've reached a point where our inventions blur so perfectly with nature that even scientists hesitate. The frontier between what's out there and what's ours has started to disappear. So what's the real legacy of 3i Atlas? Not fear, not paranoia, but a mirror, one that forces us to confront the kind of civilization we're becoming. A species that can fake nature, that can hide truth inside beauty, that can, if it chooses, disguise its own creations as celestial ghosts. And maybe that's the real danger, not that 3i Atlas was a machine, but that someday soon, one of them will be. So the next time you step outside at night and see a streak of light racing across the sky, ask yourself, is that just a piece of ancient ice, born from the chaos of creation? Or is it something far more human, a message from us, pretending to be a comet, whispering one last secret before it disappears forever? Because after 3i Atlas, one truth remains unshakable: we'll never look at the stars the same way again.